RMS Empress of Japan, also known as the Queen of the Pacific, was an ocean liner built in 1890 to 1891 by Naval Construction and Armament Co., Barrow, England for Canadian Pacific Steamships. This ship, the first of two CP vessels to be named Empress of Japan, regularly traversed the trans-Pacific route between the west coast of Canada and the Far East until 1922. Over the course of her career, the Empress traversed 4 million kilometres. She made 315 Pacific crossings. In 1891, Canadian Pacific Railway and the British government reached agreement on a contract for subsidised mail service between Britain and Hong Kong via Canada, and the route began to be serviced by 3 specially designed ocean liners. Each of these 3 vessels was given an imperial name: the RMS Empress of Japan and her 2 running mates, the RMS Empress of China and the RMS Empress of India, created a flexible foundation for the CPR Trans-Pacific Fleet which would ply this route for the next half-century. History. The Empress of Japan was built by Naval Construction and Armament Co. at Barrow, England. The 5,905-ton vessel had a length of 455.6 feet, and her beam was 51.2 feet. The white-painted clipper-bowed ship had 2 buff-colored funnels with a band of black paint at the top, 3 lightweight schooner-type masts, and an average speed of 16 knots. This Empress and her 2 sister ship Empresses were the first vessels in the Pacific to have twin propellers with reciprocating engines. The ship was designed to provide accommodation for 770 passengers. She was launched on the 13th of December 1890 by Lady Alice Stanley, daughter-in-law of Lord Stanley, who was then the Governor-General of Canada. The ship left Liverpool on the 11th of April 1891 on her maiden voyage via Suez to Hong Kong and Vancouver, arriving in British Columbia on the 2nd of June. Thereafter, she regularly sailed the route between Canada and the east coast of Asia. In the early days of wireless telegraphy, the call sign established for the Empress of Japan was MPJ. Quote, "It also transported passengers and cargo, notably Japanese tea." This vessel was part of a fleet of Empress ships, but somehow the Empress of Japan stood out, in part because she held the speed record for crossing the Pacific for over 2 decades. Captained by Captain Henry Pybus, the RMS Empress of Japan won Blue Ribbon for record crossing of the Trans-Pacific crossing of 1897. The proud ship remained in active Trans-Pacific service until 1922, and then she lingered, harbour-bound in Vancouver for several years. The Dragon masthead has been preserved at the seawall in Stanley Park. World War I. The Empress was refitted as an armed merchantman during the Great War, and consequently, she lost the elegant white gleam associated with luxury cruise ships. The agreement of commission between Canadian Pacific Railway, the Canadian federal government and the British Parliament included a clause which stated that in the event of war, the Empress of Japan would be refitted to meet Admiralty requirements. In 1914, 2 days before the Empress arrived in Yokohama on a routine trip to Asia, World War I broke out in Europe. His Majesty's Admiralty acted swiftly to take advantage of the wartime commissioning clause, and the Empress was refitted. During the war years, SS Empress of Japan was also refitted as an armed auxiliary cruiser. After the armistice, this ship was the only one of the first 3 Empress ocean liners to return to the Trans-Pacific route. In 1923, the war-weary ship was used in a different kind of battle when CP used the aging Empress to house strikebreakers in a dispute with the Vancouver and District Waterfront Workers Association. The ship remained moored in Vancouver's harbour until 1926. The CP eventually replaced the old ship with a new one, which was also called the RMS Empress of Japan. Salvaged. The figurehead was rescued after being discarded from during the salvage of the Empress of Japan by the Vancouver Daily Province newspaper. It was restored and in 1927 was mounted for public display in Vancouver's Stanley Park. That figurehead was itself replaced in 1960 with a fiberglass replica as the original was beginning to deteriorate. The original figurehead has been once again restored and is now housed at the Vancouver Maritime Museum as part of its permanent collection. Various portions of the ship's once lavish interior were also scavenged by local homeowners from Vancouver's wealthiest neighborhoods and added to the homes and property values.